Thank you for Patreon now for donating to the Patreon.
Hey guys, it's Van Diesel back in Cardfight Vanguard deck profile. So if you guys enjoyed it, like, comment, subscribe, and listen to my story. This time we are covering the first deck of my Lyrical Monasterio set for quote-unquote deck profiles, and that is Fortia. So, Fortia Friends is one of my favorite decks because you pretty much get to do what one of my favorite styles is. All-out rush, somehow get a bunch of hand cards back, and then just continue the all-out rush. That is one of my favorite type, if not my favorite type of playstyle. In fact, me and my friend literally went over this yesterday in Battle Spirit Saga, where I just love to open game rush, get down to low hand cards, and then survive a counterattack, and then build back up. It's so fun. But anyways, I'm gonna get the deck profile started, because honestly, with the new support Fortia's got, it's great. It works that style really well, and I can't wait to talk about it. So first of all, today we have our starter in Mimish Tubilalia. I said that completely wrong. Tubilila. H0 boost 5k shield, 6k base, auto and road upon if you win second, draw a card, standard starter, none that just specifies to free draw if you win second. None of the ride line really requires her, so you can choose not to run her if you want to, but might as well go for the full Friends / Fortia theme, and since Fortia has the quote-unquote nickname of Mimish in it, then obviously you want to go for the Mimish line, but again, you don't really have to run her as a starter, but I like to have her anyways because, you know, Mimish line. So one of Tubilia in the right deck. Then we have Overtrigger and Fantastic Fernail Katrina. Great Zero Boost, 50k shield, 5k power. Overtrigger and Overtrigger in your deck. When revealed, as a trigger, move that card, draw a card, choose one of your units. It gets +1 for the end of the turn, and if you're revealed it during your draft check, activate its additional effect, which you get during this fight. You get during your turn. All your rear guards get +10,000 power. This thing is incredibly powerful. I'm not going to say broken, but if you pull this early enough in this deck, it is broken. Because like I said earlier, in this deck, or at least the way I play it, you want to rush as early as possible. What I mean by that is the second you can attack. It doesn't matter if it's grade 1 turn, doesn't matter if it's grade 2 turn, if it worse is at grade 3 turn, but typically by grade 3 turn, you have a full board of units unless your opponent board nuked you. Like, I quite literally mean rush them if you have the ability to. Call down grade 1s, call down PGs for all I care. I've done that before and it actually worked. But like, you know, you just want to rush, and being able to use the Overtrigger to help add 10,000 power to your entire board makes it a lot better, because that means every rear guard column swinging for +20 of whatever its actual number is, and then the Vanguard column swinging for +10 of whatever its actual number is. Armor on Katrina is really good. You pull it defensively, you got 1,000,000 in a draw, you pretty much survive the turn. You pull it defensively, your opponent's going to have one hell of a time trying to survive this game. So one of Katrina, just very good over. Then we have our normal triggers. First, we run 3 copies of our front trigger, Snowskip Paravi. Grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 4k base, continuous guard circle. If your opponent's Vanguards are grade 3 or greater, she was 5k shield. So, you know, 20k shield is nice to have. It's also front triggers, you know, helping increase the numbers of your big-ass board is even better, especially when you're not necessarily getting multi-attack consistently, or, well, you're getting 4 attacks, but like, you're not getting rear guard multi-attacks. However, you're getting bigger numbers out of this. So it's nice to have for that 20k shield, but also, again, bigger numbers, so 3 of. Also works really well in the early game rush. Then we have our 4 draws in Thick and Fluffy Siesta Hilma. Grades of boost, 5k shield, 5k base. A standard draw, nuts without it. You can run Bertoy. Please run Bertoy. Do not be me. Run Bertoy. They have the same exact skill. Or wait, no, they don't. Sorry. Bertoy has the 5k skill, the one that gives it a 10k shield, basically. Just has 4k, or just have 1k less BP, not BP. I'm getting all my games confused. 1,000 less power. However, I run Hilma because Hilma's a war beast, Fortia's a war beast, etc. Run Bertoy. Please be smart, but still run 4 draws because you want to increase your hand. And if you play this deck like I do, where you actively rush the second you get the chance, you are going to want to increase your hand for when your opponent eventually board nukes you and then you have to call it back. So, 4 of Hilma, very solid to help keep me alive. Then we have 4 copies of original style El Shuka, Grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 5k power, or as I like to call it, the crit that is the equivalent to instant death. I don't know how the math on El Shuka works, but pretty much how it works is when I want to see a crit, she's there. When my opponent doesn't want me to see a crit, she's there. When I want to see triple crit for some arbitrary reason, because I think it might happen, sees triple crit, even though there's only 4 crits in this deck, meaning all 3 El Shukas were right next to each other for no apparent reason. I don't understand how she works. She just works to either make my life so much harder if I'm playing against her, or makes my life so much better when I'm playing against her. 4 of El Shuka, she's just, if I want to see her, I'll see her. That's pretty much how it works. Then there's 4 copies of our Heal and Peaceful Guardian Anika, grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 5k power. Okay. Doesn't matter if counter heals are better or not. Like, I don't like counter heals. I'd much rather have the consistent 15k shield over the fluctuating 10 to 25. But also, in this case, regardless, I'm picking Anika. You can really run any heal trigger you want, but I'm picking Anika because, while yes, she was in most of my decks just because she's the one that fit the most themes, because a lot of them were War Beasts, and I just didn't feel like changing out the heals because I was lazy. Anika actually is really good. I don't know why, but Anika's like Oshuka, where if I want to see a heal, I will see her. She is tied in D for one of my... She's in the top 3 of the heals I have heal sacked the most, whether it was 6 damage heal, I just needed to heal in general, or I drew her the turn that I needed to see her. Like, as in, I just drew her as an extra shield, like, not even drove checker. So, 4 of Anika. She has come back to save me more times than I can count, and she's at least in the top 3 of my heals that have saved me in D. So, yeah, 4 of Anika. I kind of owe her the spot. Then we have our grade 1s. First one, 2 copies of Irresistible Vibes Amber, grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base. Friends, continues rearguard. That's the only time I'm going to read this. If you have another unit in the same column as her, that and this unit both become friends. This deck's main gimmick. So basically, you want to have at least one unit in each column that has friends. So you don't have to run all friends like I do, but I do just in case you have to resort to calling triggers. And again, if you play like me, that will probably happen at some point. I haven't had it happen yet, but it's going to happen at some point. But, you know, being able to make itself and something else in the friend state is great because that works out with both Fortias. And then auto rearguard, when she boosts a unit attacking a grade 3 or greater unit, if you have a Vanguard 14 as card name and you have 5 or more of their friends on rearguard, Soul Blast Hoodoo, and your opponent cannot call Sentinels from hand guard circle during this battle. All around, pretty solid, because it doesn't matter if it swings into a grade 3 or greater Vanguard, it just has to boost a unit that is swinging into a grade 3 or greater unit. So if your opponent has a very important grade 3 on board, this thing immediately makes it so your opponent can't Sentinel it, which is great because, you know, either you go to Vanguard or you go to rearguard, but pretty much what you do, you stack a bunch of triggers and every power effect you can onto the unit in front of this, or you sack the over and you put the over's 1 million power on it, then you swing it into Vanguard or Rearguard and then Soul Blast the 2, basically making it so unless they have enough hand cards to somehow block the over, which is physically impossible in this game, I'm pretty sure it's physically impossible, then, yeah, they're taking that because they can't stop it with Sentinels. So, 2 of Amber, very solid, like, she is good in the late game, but, like, outside of that, she's kind of like 50-50, especially because most of the time the Vanguard's the one being Sentinel, and I never really called it behind the Vanguard, considering how I play, I tend to call the grade 1 of the ride line to back center, but I mean, hey, Amber's good for good, so 2 of her. She also takes up Soul, which is sometimes 50-50 okay, but she's good. Then we have 3 copies of, if you've ever played against friends, you've probably seen this at least once or twice, and that's Earnest Star Yvetta. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base. The reason why this deck can rush on grade 1. Friends contains rearguard, same effect as usual, and then continues rearguard. If you have another friends, it gets plus 2k power. That's during both players' turns. Now, 10k base grade 1 doesn't sound like it does much, because it's just a 10k base. Like, if they swing into it, it's not going to be that hard to kill it, and when it's boosting, it's just an extra 2k, which might make a difference by 5k guarding power. However, again I say, when you rush like me in the early game, and you call down your entire hand, and I mean your entire hand, I mean the entire board is filled by the time you get to grade 3. Even if your opponent somehow finds a way to board nuke you, you will find a way to bring it back. Like, that's the type of thing I mean by rushing. Like, by the end of your first grade 3 turn, you're probably gonna, unless you got lucky and you saw every single card that draws, you're probably gonna have 4 hand cards flat because of how this deck works. But, anyways, Yvetta being able to increase her numbers, so 10k, is great, because that means in the early game rush, you can strike a little bit faster, add a little bit more guarding power to it, and in the late game, over time, her 2k ends up adding more and more, because 5k once doesn't sound that bad, but then when you're increasing that every turn, it adds up. So 3 of Yvetta, all around pretty solid. She adds numbers overall to the end game, and she's just a really good card in early game rush, and I like to have her, so 3 of. Then we have 4 copies of our PG and Soapy Splash Ravenia. I don't know why I can never say that. Grade 1 boost 5, 0 shows this K base. Continuous Sentinel. You may have up to 4 Sentinels in deck and also put on guard circle. Choose one of your units. It cannot be hit till in battle. And if your hand has 2 or more cards in it, choose a card from your hand and discard it. Standard PG, nothing too special about it. Basically, that means if this and only one other card is in your hand, we place it on guard circle. You don't have to discard one. Great. Because that means you can be as aggressive as you want in the early game. Again, I say, rush with everything like your life depends on it. And then when your opponent counterattacks you, because you have only 4 cards, throw down the PG, give them the middle finger, you're good. Especially if you found a way to guard beforehand and drop at least 2 of those cards. Because then you don't have to discard one, and that means you were still aggressive and your opponent barely did anything to you. 4 Vivena, all around very solid PG. Like, you can run any of the PGs from their Comastero because they all pretty much have the same skill and they have like 6-7 different variants of the same one. But I mean, I like Ravena because, again, War Beast, Fortia is a War Beast, and just all around works very solidly for nullifying attacks. So 4 Ravenia. Then we have our last grade 1, one of in the ride deck, none in the main deck of Mimish Azachir, grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, the standard friends ability, but it also works on Vanguard Circle instead of just Rearguard Circle specifically, so there you go. And then auto when she was rolled upon by Mimish Rika Shimna, call this card to Rearguard Circle. So Again, the starter isn't required, but I mean, I do run the Mima starter anyways. And, you know, when Ropan levels grade 2, you call it to rear guard, which is great. You don't have to call it anywhere specifically as long as it goes to rear guard circle, but I choose to call this to back center because I like to have an 18k swing, especially because I probably have one of my many grade 2s ready to fill up my board. So, one of Azachir, just all around very solid. Like, you don't really need her in the main deck because she calls herself from Soul, and it's just all around nice card, so one of in the right deck. Then we have our grade 2s. 4 of Giant Beatstick that has somehow done less and less the more I upgrade this deck, but is now, like, endgame type of thing. That's the weird thing. She used to never be an endgame card, or, like, she would lead to the endgame, but she was never, like, that amazing in the endgame for me personally. She was really good in the early game, though. And then we would get to, like, the second variant of this deck, and she was, like, not amazing in the end game, but she definitely didn't have her same hold that she did in the early game, and now she doesn't have that same hold in the early game, but she has that hold in the end game now. Anyways, Cherish Smile Larissa, grade 2 and a set 5k shield, 10k base. Friend continues rear guard circle, etc. And then auto rear guard when she attacks into anything. If your opponent's vanguards are grade 3 or greater, she gives 2k power ton of battle for each of your other friends, which means that most in this deck she'll be a 20k swing. That doesn't sound like that much, but you have to remember, boosters, let's just say it's a standard 8k booster, 28k boost, your Persona items, 38k, without any triggers, that's 38k, which is a good number, over trigger possibly, 48k, fuck it, trigger, 68k, like, she's all around very good, like, she is just a big beat stick that kind of just swings for game, so, for Larissa, all around just a very solid grade 2, and I love to run out of 4 in this deck. Then we have 4 copies of the card literally anyone that has ever played against Lyrical Monasterio has probably seen, and that is Hoppin' Stellar Melty. Grade 2 set 5k shield, 10k base, friend contains rear guard circle as per usual, and then auto when she is placed on rear guard during your main phase, counterblast when you choose to 1 card with grade equal to land or less than your vanguard from your hand, call it to rear guard if you call it a card you draw. And this is the reason why this deck can consistently rush on turn 2 and then not have to suffer anything. Because it doesn't matter what grade your Vanguard, I mean, technically it does, but I mean, most of this deck, there's literally no other grade 3s in this deck outside of the Fortias, meaning the second you get to grade 2, you call down 2 Melties, you make 2 rear guards, typically either you double Aveta or 1 Amber in Aveta, and then you just replace them with draws, and then boom, you have a full board because this went to back center, and you now have a full board of friends, and then unless your opponent board nukes you next turn, you carry that over into Fortia, who now has restands. 4 of Melty, all around very solid grade 2. In the early game, she literally just enables the rush consistently. I mean, without her, the rush still lives, but she enables it to be consistent. And when the late game comes around, if your opponent board nukes you, she's a nice way to kind of bring it back into your control. So 4 of her, all around very solid grade 2, and she's just amazing. Then we have 4 copies of Boisterous High Tension Roxella, grade 2 set 5k shield, 10k base, friend continues rear guard circle, same as ability as usual, and then auto rear guard when she attacks into a vanguard. If you have 3 or more of their friends, she gives us 5k power ton to that battle, and if you have 5 or more, choose one of your rear guards with the friend's ability not in the same column as her, you may bounce it to your hand. All around pretty solid. Sad thing is it has to bounce it with the friend ability and not in the friend state. I say this because that means you can't call a PG and then bounce it to hand if it's in front of, let's say, Aveta, but I mean, being able to be boosted by anything and get the thing is great. I mean, it's swing on anything and it still gets the skill. So 15k swing, which is nice, but then also, sadly, she can't bounce something in the same column as her, so you can't get back your other important rear guards. But being able to bounce your other grade 2 who might be able to do that crap again, or a very big beat stick that might be able to make your opponent die next turn that you know your opponent's going to target, is all around pretty solid. Roxella's just a very good grade 2 in the second they bring back those like PGs that did effects for their archetypes. Even if they just give it like the standard, like not even this PG skill, but like, you know, the one where you have to discard, but then they gave it the friends ability. Honestly, I feel like you would run it over this just because of that. So, you know, 4 Roxella, very good, gets numbers, not amazing numbers, but it can bounce back your stuff to make your opponent have a lot harder of a time the following turn, and just makes it harder for them to kill your stuff. 4 Roxella, just very good grade 2. Then we have 4 copies of Crystallization of Special Feelings Barain, grade 2 and set 5k shield, 10k base. Let's get this out the way. Moon! But also I just really love like the, I don't know why, it feels like it does have like a crystalline effect. I don't know why. Anyways, friends continues rear guard circle, same effect as usual, and then continues from a rear guard circle, sadly, otherwise you could just spam a board with 4 of these and that ability would stack. During your turn, if you have 3 or more of their friends, all your vanguards with 14 on their card, you get 5k power, and your opponent's vanguards are grade 3 or greater, she also gets plus 10k. So, literally have back center in the vanguard, you automatically have 2 and put anything behind her or in front of her, technically, but it will be behind her, and automatically have 4 unison or 3 or more of the unison friends, meaning the vanguard's an 18k base during your turn. If you have 2 of these, 23k base, and a restanding vanguard with 23k base is very fun. And then she'll also be a 20k base as well. All around, very solid. It makes your board a little bit better in terms of beat sticks. It makes the restanding Vanguard a lot more dangerous, because even if it's only 5k, again, like I said with Yvette, 5k more guarding power every single turn, that is going to add up very quickly. So for Bahrain, all around, very solid. She's good. She adds numbers to herself. She adds numbers to Vanguard. What's not to like about her? Easy 4 of. Then we have last grade 2, one of in the ride deck, none in the main deck, of Mimish Rikashina. Grade 10, so 5k shield, 10k base. The originator, I believe, or either that or it was the Hermina line that did it first, but then she kind of copied off it, which was fair. And that of like the ride deck discard skills. Anyways, friends, continues Vanguard or Rearguard Circle, standard ability, and then continues Vanguard Circle. If you have another friend, when you would ride Mimish Fortia from your ride deck, you can ride without discarding a card from your hand. All around pretty solid because it can be something in back center, it can be something on your other Rearguard Circles, as long as you have another unit in the friend state, which is great. It's easy to do because all you need is just 2 other rear guards or 1 other rear guard. Like I said, you could just call this behind the center and automatically it becomes in the front state. That's normally why I do it. You get a free ride, which is great because that means, again, you could be as aggressive as you want in the early game, and then you get to still keep your hand cards to ride to grade 3, which means you can use those hand cards to get more rear guards. Our Rikashina is very great. Sadly, she doesn't have a rear guard skill outside of friends, but when the Vanguard skill honestly works with the deck's gimmick that well and isn't just, oh, free ride deck just for free ride deck, she's pretty solid. So one of Rikashina on the ride deck, none in the main deck, because yeah, free ride deck grade 3 that turns into board spotter. So yeah. Then we move on to our grade 3s. First, we run 2 copies of Mimish Fortia, none in the ride deck, 2 of in the main deck. Grade 3, 200% 13k base. Friend continues Vanguard or Rearguard, standard friend thing. And then auto Vanguard Circle, once per turn, at the end of the battle that she attacked into anything, whether it's Vanguard or Rearguard. If you have 5 or more of the friends, counterboss 1, ditch 1, stand this unit, and gets with 5k power and lose a drive for the turn. I remember I used to not think this was good when she first came out, because I just felt like it was the worst version of Overlord. Then I played the deck, and then I consistently realized that this thing having technically triple drive inherently is great, especially when the whole point of the deck is the early game rush. And again, if you're like me, you early game rush the previous turn, meaning your opponent has to survive that. Then you go into 4 attacks the following turn with technically a total of triple drive, and the Vanguard being an 18k swing on one of those swings, and possibly a 21k swing on the other one if you boost with your starter, or this thing. So, yeah, all around, very nice pressure, at least from one early game rush just to another early game rush, and you are consistently more or less getting hand cards to replace the cards you ditched for the full board restand, or not full board restand, for the, oh, that's going to be their upgrade if they ever get a grade 4 full board restand, but like, you know, the restand of herself, and also just a CB1 and discard 1, like, that's great, because if you haven't noticed, the only cost we've seen so far is 1 from Melty, 2 from Amber, and then, you know, 1 from her. So, I mean, we consistently have access to CB and Soul Blast more or less out the wazoo. So, 2 of Fortia, very nice restand, and you can go into her if you want to, but you don't really go into her unless the situation calls for it, because in my opinion, the other grade 3 is better, because it's what the other grade 3 is. Full Moon Magic Fortia. First up, Moon. Second up, Moon. Am I a little? And it has like the what's it called? It's I remember. I know it starts with an A, but like, you know, where 2 letters start off with the same thing for 2 words. But yeah, no. All around, that's my bias on this. But 3 of in the main deck, 1 of in the ride deck. That's not the only reason why she's in the ride deck. Anyways, grade 3, 10% 13k base. Dress up Mimish Fortia. During this fight, she was also regarded as a specified card. So, you know, even though while your deck ability there are considered different names, second you start the fight, they are the same name, but that doesn't mean you can't run any of them more than 4. You just have to run them each at separate, at most 4 copies. So, you know, being a total 6 of is great, but also she still procs off Rikashina's effect, meaning you get to ride deck for free. Anyways, her skill continues Vanguard or Rearguard. I am going to read this one out because this one is special. If you have another unit in the same combat as her, both that and this unit become friends. And if you have 3 or more of their friends, so, you know, ignoring the back center, if you have 1 other rear guard, she automatically, well, in the friend state, she automatically gets this effect. She gets triple drive. So we now have triple drive consistently without having to CB1 and discard 1. Cool, cool. And then auto Vanguard, once per turn, if you either Persona Rote this turn, this cost may be paid by counterboss 1 and discard 1 instead, so we just get OG skill. But normally, at the end of the battle that she attacked, if you have 5 or more of their friends, by discarding a 14 in its card name, or again, if you Persona Rote CB1 and discard 1, stand this unit, and she loses 2 drives for the turn. Here's the important things to note. Quad drive. This thing has quad drive. It inherently has triple drive, and if you restand it once, it has quad drive. And the best part is, if you're just constantly discarding a Fortia, well, yes, you're possibly discarding Persona Rides. I mean, typically you want to hit this first, but for the record, before I continue the sentence, yes, you can Persona Ride this on top of this and vice versa. But anyways, you know, it doesn't cost CB if you do it this way, meaning you can just spam Melty as long as you want to, and you won't have to pay the consequences for that. But, yeah. Free restand, or literally just the same cost restand, but we get one more drive check out of it. Cool. So we went from being able to consistently balance out the hand that we're dropping for these ones to now getting more of it. You know how many times I sacked the over with this deck? Every single time but one. Every single time but one I've played this, I've sacked the over. Yeah. 4 Tia. She's just good. Like, the amount of times I will just check triggers, it's just great, because you have quad drive, a turn. So, yeah, take that as you will. In your early game rushing the opponent, even if she doesn't get the 5k, guess where this one comes in? So, yeah, it's just that good. And that's it for the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed. All around, this deck is very fun to play. Like, you get rear guard rush out the wazoo, and like I said, that is one of my favorite, if not my favorite playstyle of all time with any card game. Just rushing my opponent, watching them counterattack me, and then me standing back up after surviving it, and then continuing the rush and pushing them back down. We get triple drive out of it. We get triple drive out of it. We get quad drive out of it. We get the thing that replaces Fortia's ability entirely and even strengthens up the OG Fortia if we need to. We have board spammer, which makes this deck more consistently. We have this thing, which just makes your opponent harder to kill you. We have giant beat stick, which does so much in the late game. We have rear guard rush. It's just all around very fun to play. So now for the dumb someone here, I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, don't forget to follow Twitch, and I'll see you all in the next one. Don't forget to stand up your vanguards.